Hello and welcome to the AVForums podcast for Monday the 13th of August. And joining me in this edition, Steve Withers.
Don't doubt yourself, son. Doubt kills.
Ed Selley.
Change your world.
And Mark Botwright.
My real name's Alina.
Hello, Alina. Right, we're back. It's podcast time. What have you been up to, Ed?
Well, as I was explaining to you before the podcast started, I have been hurrying back from Bedfordshire to actually do the podcast. I got confused with the days. So I woke up with not that much time to the podcast starting, some way distant from my house. But so, I sorted that. That's fine.
So was it a dirty stopover, is basically what you're saying?
Yeah. It was like Brokeback Mountain, but more erotic.
Did you have to do the walk of shame? Or?
Well, no, I parked my car outside. So that was all right.
Okay.
That's not useless, I take it, is it?
Yeah. But no, that was fine. I have been busying myself with various bits of audio work, and that's all been jolly exciting. And yeah, although I further to last week's podcast, didn't make it to the Tank Museum.
I'm going on Monday, so the week after this podcast goes up, I'm going to Bovington.
Well, we will see what happens this weekend coming. But my son was a bit ill on the Friday, so we were delayed getting down. We did end up going to the Museum of Army Flying, which had a small armoured anti-aircraft vehicle outside. So I took a nostalgic photo of that on Instagram because
there you go. There's your Tank Museum. Now we're off.
I actually remember those at the Amiga game Gunship 2000, which was actually a cracking helicopter sim game, and those things were a right pain in the arse because they were proper deadly if you encountered one of them. So yeah, it was nice to nostalgically see one of those.
It's great when you get nostalgic for things that you first encountered in video games.
I would agree, but if your childhood was so traumatic that you encountered one strutting its stuff in real life, I don't think you'd probably want to see one again. So no, I think computer games is probably the happy solution to that.
What have you been up to, Mark?
Still trying to build this bicycle. I ended up rubbing it down again.
Once again, I really hope that's not a euphemism.
Yeah. And then I got on with the bicycle, yeah. But no, I've decided to clear the shed, hang it up in there, and that way then it won't get any kind of dust particles, anything like that. And so if I put on the lacquer coat now, then I'll stop kind of fiddling about with it.
Have you take a lot of time, Mark? Are you not trying to reinvent the wheel, are you?
Yeah, I get too kind of involved in it, and just after a while you kind of think, there's a tiny little bit here that's slightly rougher, so you get out the wet and dry, and and it's getting stupid now.
There's going to be an Oscar-worthy film out of this. One man and his bicycle obsession.
Surely he's reinventing two wheels. Boom boom.
Oh, nice.
20 hours. That seems to be quite excessive. You're only painting a bike. It's not a car or a lorry or a bus.
I stripped it down to bare metal. I was foolish there. I've spent more in sanding blocks than it's worth.
And the thing is that now you've reached a point where you can't back out.
Oh yeah,
it's got to keep going.
Yeah. After the third can of primer, you start to think I've got a real problem now.
Okay, well, best of luck with that. I hope when it comes to the next coat that you put on, you don't get any tear marks or anything. Are you going to machine polish and buff it down once it's done? And again, not a euphemism.
Well, I was considering doing something along those lines, but on a manual level, which is you just give it a slight rub over with a tiny bit of wet sandpaper, and then you buff it with a bit of tea-cut, that kind of thing.
Right.
But no, I think that's going too excessive.
Too excessive. You already spent 20 hours on the paint.
Yeah.
I'm sure they could paint a 747 in that time.
They could paint the fourth rail bridge in that time.
Yeah, but then you have to do it all over again like Botwright is. So,
That's it. Right, Steve, starting with a euphemism, what have you been up to?
At the weekend, I watched season 4 of Rebels, which I thoroughly enjoyed, and I'm man enough to say that I shed a tear at the end.
Yeah, but you're at the age now where you just cry at everything.
What did you shed a tear out of?
Isn't it normally me that goes that low?
You answered. We needed a euphemism. I delivered.
Thank you.
In all seriousness, though, Steve, surely once you get older, I've noticed it now. I'm almost mid-40s. That you just cry at anything and anything.
My dad's terrible. My dad will burst into tears at the drop of a hat, and it's quite embarrassing when you're sort of in the middle of a restaurant and suddenly you start telling a story about World War II or something, and there's floods of tears, and you're like, it's not that sad. Yeah, he's. I mean, we're going to worry about him actually. But
I think. Sorry, no. Can I just stop you there? World War II, it's not that sad.
Well, no, obviously World War II was inherently a sad event, but the story he was actually telling was kind of funny, I thought, but he burst into tears. Yes.
Get over it, war veterans.
Yeah. Oh, dear.
How old do you think I am? He was a baby in World War II.
Well, we think you're very old, as being established on.
I am older than you, obviously. I always find it quite depressing when I realise, as I was going to see Empire Strikes Back at the cinema, you were being born.
December 80.
Not literally.
Yeah, it makes it sound part of
Actually,
the movie.
no, you were born when I went to see you, because I saw it in the summer of 80, so it was another 6 months before you turned up.
Well, there you go.
Thought.
And do you know what's really depressing is that I have now too reached an age where bits of me no longer work terribly well, although I have thus far held off from the male menopause and I don't weep randomly at things. Although maybe that's because I'm an emotional cripple that went to boarding school.
When do you hit 40, Ed?
I'm 38 in December this year, so I've got a little bit yet.
Another 2 years' time, right? You'll be watching Countryfile on a Sunday night and you'll just suddenly burst into
tears. All right, okay.
Anyway,
I'll bear that
as far as Rebels go, 4 seasons of well-developed characters that I actually cared about, which is something interesting because I couldn't have given a monkeys about any of the characters in The Last Jedi, for example. But I care about the characters in Rebels. They set it up really well. They do some really cool stuff in season 4 that ties everything together with the rest of the saga. And it reached an emotional crescendo that I thought was really well done. Dave Filoni, I think, understands the nature of Star Wars. It delivers entertaining product that remains true to the spirit, but still develops new ideas. And,
I've yet to watch this. It sounds really good. Is it on Blu-ray?
I don't think it's been announced yet for the UK. So you might have to wait a little bit there. Obviously, you can get season 1, 2, and 3 very cheaply on Blu-ray in the UK. So if you haven't seen it yet, Mark, I really recommend it. I think it's excellent.
Just for continuity's sake, the reason Steve's now suddenly out of breath in that segue is he's been away and lifted a TV and come back in the meantime. Yeah.
He's not burst into tears or had an emotional sort of collapse.
Okay, and we managed to get to Star Wars within the first 10 minutes of the podcast. So well done there, Steve. That's a new record for us.
We won't mention it again.
No, that's fine.
This podcast.
Yeah, I was going to say we will mention it again, just not in this podcast.
You were well. I mean, obviously you've had a busy day, haven't you? A busy day yesterday, Phil, because you went. You decided to do a 2-hour engagement, which required a mere 8 hours of driving.
9 hours of driving, 4.5 hours each way on the M1 during the week, holiday season.
Fun.
Absolute fun. It was swelteringly hot when I left, even at 7:30 yesterday morning when I left Durham. So I decided that I wasn't going to go in jeans and a shirt. I was going to wear some shorts because I thought it's going to be a nice day down there. It's going to be far hotter than it is up here, up in the north. And I'm going to be in a room full of items blowing hot air. And so, yeah, I thought, well, no, I'm going to wear some shorts and because I'm not going to stand in sweat. I want to be comfortable when I'm doing this. Gets there, it's absolutely chucking down the rain, 16 degrees. I get out a bright blue Mustang wearing some shorts. I must have looked like a right one.
Did you at least wear a Hawaiian shirt? Because I'm just imagining you stepping out looking like Magnum PI.
No. I wore a smart T-shirt. I was dressed casual but smart. But
smart T-shirt.
But I turned up.
The thing is, though, that it's not like you've decided to correct this, is it? You know, I've got out my bright blue Mustang. Perhaps you'd like to tell the listeners, you know, you might have ordered another Ford, haven't you, Phil? And is it a nice grey Focus or a titanium silver Mondeo?
Or bright orange.
Right. Well, I think I have to tell the whole story here, so that and we'll be quick. But the whole story is that they were bringing out a special edition Mustang this year called the Bullitt. It's based on the 1968 Mustang featured in the film Bullitt. It's the 50th anniversary this year of that film, so they were bringing out a special edition Mustang in deep Highland green with the 1960s torque thrust alloy design and so on. And it's going to be a really limited car, so limited that my dealer had initially sold out. So I'd kind of put it on the back burner, but then I got a phone call on Monday morning saying, I've got one. I said, right, I'll be down to speak to you about it. And I went into the dealership, and the long and short of it was I couldn't afford it. It was just because it's a limited edition car. Obviously, it's a lot more money, and we did the figures and all the rest of it. I couldn't do it. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't stretch it. But I wasn't disappointed because I ended up buying a bright orange Mustang, a 2019 model. So he's a good salesman, this guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a 2019 model, so it's a facelifted model, so it's got a new front end on it, it's new design, it's got a brand new engine in it, which is now direct and port injection. There's loads of safety features and stuff on it. It now scores 3 stars NCAP rather than 2 stars. But it's got things like active exhaust, so you can put it in track mode and it's louder than the aftermarket exhaust that I put on the Mustang I've got at the moment. But then you can also set quiet mode. So when you go out to the car at half past 7,
Blue Thunder whisper mode.
Basically what it does is it closes all the valves down in the exhaust, so it's really, really quiet. So you can put it in a quiet mode. So if you're coming home at 11 o'clock at night and you don't want to wake up the neighbours or whatever, put it in a quiet mode and it just shuts the whole system down and makes it really quiet. Or you can have it really, really loud and be obnoxious if you want to be. So there's that. There's the digital dash and all the rest of it. But yes, it is what's called Orange Fury is the name of the paint. And the only other extra I ticked was the Recaro sports seats in leather. And that's it. And it will be here
this one's
in
got
March.
An extra pedal though, hasn't it?
Oh yes, I've gone back to manual. So the last 2 Mustangs that I've had have been autos. And the reason I went for an auto was I came out of an Audi S3 which had the dual clutch auto. And getting into the Mustang, it was like a slush box in comparison. But I've managed to, the last 2 Mustangs have been great. It's just I fancy going back to manual. I fancy using my left leg again and rowing through the gears and stuff. It's, yeah. So I'm looking forward to it. It comes in March. Should be here.
Lovely. And it'll be very subtle. I mean, you'll only be able to see it from space.
You'll see me coming. So if you see a bright orange Mustang, give us a flash of lights, give us a wave.
Now, you're not tempted to take the plate off this one with all of its various horse references and put it on the other one. Hold on to it as your Mustang plate.
No, I am. I'm considering a plate. I have one in mind that I may put on it.
Is it VOM1T?
I hadn't thought of that one. That's good. I'm going to go and see if that's available.
I don't think it was ever issued.
Well, you see, it was either this bright orange or the other one I quite fancied was Need for Green, which is like it's like the blue that I've got is that kind of finish, but in green, like a bright green. Right. But I thought it looked a bit too John Deere. So you would
get some nice yellow wheels to go with it.
That's it, or yellow stripes over the top of John Deere, or you would get Kermit or whatever. So I thought, nah, I'm not going to go that way. I can't be putting up with those jibes. But anyway, right. So that's what we've been up to this week.
You do realise that I am simply going to name the car David Dickinson, and that is all I will refer to it as.
I've already had Cheese Whiz and some other things.
I was thinking of the old Tango commercial.
Yeah, you've been tangoed. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, good one. Oh, at least it's
T4NG0.
Right, I'm going to look for that one as well.
What were those orangey little crisp things?
What's it?
What's it?
Yeah. What's it?
Yeah, where's your what's it? Okay.
So the possibilities for mockery are endless.
Yes,
and congratulations, Phil, on your environmentally conscientious new Ford.
You could regrow your ginger moustache as well.
Yeah, let's not go there. Right, competition time. Mark, tell us all about it.
Okie dokie. You can win a copy of Flesh and Blood on Blu-ray, and that one closes on the 14th of August. And we've also got Police Story 1 and 2 on Blu-ray, and you've got until the 20th of August for that one.
Okay. Any previous winners?
Yes. PMR won Game Night on Blu-ray, and AD Bailey 18 won the Samsung 55-inch Q6F QLED TV.
Excellent.
Did you
Good
just
stuff.
Do the Police Story one?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear him.
The tea trolley's coming along in a moment, Grandad.
I wasn't paying attention.
Were you just having a quick cry?
Okay, we'll be back in a sec if Steve can keep it together with hardware news.
What did you do during the war, Grandad?
Wept.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back for hardware news, and we're going to change things up because Ed's going to go first this week. Because normally we steam in with the AV stuff, but no, we're going to have a bit of hi-fi from Ed first. Arcam makes some excellent products. They've been around such a long time, and they're a company who I've got a long history with as well. So I remember the old days back at Bristol, meeting up with John and so on, and having a good old natter about what he'd been up to and the new products coming along and so on. So they've got a new integrated amplifier. You've been having a look at it. Tell us all about it.
Yes. To be clear on this, Arcam have been around for a long time, and critically, in contrast to a number of other manufacturers, they really only change things when they feel there's a damn good reason to. So the preceding FMJ series of Arcam components, I think the first FMJ stuff came out last century, to put it into perspective. So changing to new design and new casework is a big deal for Arcam. They don't do it very often. They only do it when they have a reason to. But the new HDA components, high definition audio, make of that what you will. 3 products, 2 integrated amplifiers and a CD player cum streamer. We had a look at the larger of the 2 integrated amplifiers, the SA20. And the reason selected the SA20 was twofold. One, there is another £1,000 amplifier that I've looked at in this clutch of reviews, so it makes an interesting point of comparison. And it's also the cheapest, or most affordable, perhaps I should say, Arcam integrated amplifier to use the company's Class G amplification system. So this is £1,000. It's the most affordable way of listening to a different amplifier.
That's a pretty good deal, I've got to say.
And the other thing is that this is, if you like, a thoroughly modern integrated. It has digital inputs, reflecting the fact that source equipment is no longer doesn't exactly work in the same way as it used to. You can stick an Ethernet socket in the back of it and control it over IP, which potentially is a boon for custom installers. And it's a good amplifier. I don't really. Arcam hasn't made a very large number of bad amplifiers. It does all the things that you would expect an Arcam to do. It is in the copy I point out. If you believe that saying something is easy listening is a criticism, that's a bit of a weird one. It is perfectly possible in the line of work that I do, where I sit and write in front of equipment. You can put the SA20 on in the morning and just wind your way through your music collection, and at no stage is it anything other than really good to listen to. And I think that's, in terms of long-term satisfaction, you might not put it on the first time at a dealer demonstration and get sonic fireworks out of it, but you'll come to appreciate that when you just realize that you can spend vast tracts of time listening to it and enjoying it. It's not perfect. I think Arcam has chosen their choice of and selection of digital inputs is not quite as flexible as some rivals. I think it could have benefited from having Bluetooth, and the looks will be a matter of taste. I quite like it, and I quite like the fact that in some ways there is a tiny bit of, if you like, reflection of the original Alpha series stuff from way back in the past, and I like the fact that that's been done quite carefully. The other problem is the other amplifier I've reviewed this month, which we'll have a look at as and when it's ready to go up, because that is the same price to the penny. And in some regards, it moves the game on a little further than the Arcam, at the expense, perhaps, of not always being as genuinely engaging to listen to.
Ed, it sounds like it's a type of product that, like you say, when you go to a dealer demo, it might not immediately pop out, but it's one of these products that after listening a while, you actually miss it when it's not there. Would that be accurate?
Yes, that's fair to say. It's if you have a wide selection of musical genres in your collection, and if you have stuff which just, you listen to it and you think that's not a great recording, the Arcam has the ability to work well with your good stuff and make your less brilliant recordings just work in a way that some more forensic rivals can't. It's one thing. I have to say I'm a little out of touch as to at what level home demonstrations become a practical proposition for hi-fi dealers in 2018. But I would wager that you'll sell more SA20s by leaving the customer in their own house with it for a couple of days than you will sitting them down in a high-pressure dem environment and A-Bing it against something else. But that was all, in many ways, that's always been the Arcam way. And there's no significant change with the with this Class G technology and this new casework. This is it's an amplifier for grown-ups. It's not about turning it on in front of your mates and go wow like that. It is simply being able to sit down and listen to your accrued musical history and enjoy all of it.
Good stuff. So that review will be up hopefully the week that you're listening to the podcast. We'll try and make an effort to make sure that it is up there for you to read. So thanks very much for that, Ed. And we're going to stick with audio, and we're going to go to Steve, because Steve's had another subwoofer in the house. Did it break your back this time? Did you need to hire the forklift truck for this one?
Thank God this one was a sensible size and weight. Yeah. It's the REL, or REL. REL? It's REL, isn't it?
REL, yes.
I've always said REL. HT/1003.
Do you know where REL comes from, Steve? Why it's called REL? Because it was the guy that invented it. So it was Richard E. Lord.
Yes, that's right.
So that's where it comes from.
Yeah, and I don't know anybody else. I personally, it was my first subwoofer was a REL.
Yes,
anybody else start with a REL?
Storm, yeah, I started with the REL Storm.
Yeah, back in the mid-90s.
96, no, 95. I bought the REL Storm. It had just come out. 95, yeah.
I think I was 90. I think I bought my REL in 97. I think it was.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway. So REL, I mean, you associate them with subwoofers, but interestingly, generally I think, and Ed, I know you reviewed one of their subs, I think last year, and you could probably testify to this. Traditionally, a REL sub has a high-level input and a low-level input, and the idea is that with the high-level input, you put the output from the amplifier or receiver to the sub, and then onto the speakers in a stereo configuration to use the sub as part of a stereo setup. Right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. This sub deviates from that traditional REL pattern. It's specifically designed for home theatre. So there's two of them at the moment, and the naming convention actually tells you what they do. So the HT, home theatre, 10-inch driver, 03, 300 watts of amplification. There's also an HT 1205, so 12-inch driver and 500 watts of amplification. And these are specifically aimed at for the home theatre market. So there's no high-level input. There's just a low-level LFE input. And obviously, it's aimed at a specific price point too. So you can get the HT 1003 for £499, which I've got to say I think is a very reasonable, attractive price point. And because of that, obviously, it's built to a price point. So it's not particularly flashy, but then again, it's a sub. It's a black cube. What do you expect? It's a black wooden cube. It sits on some wooden feet. I've got to say, if you put it on a wooden floor or a linoleum floor or something like that, you want to maybe think about using the rubber feet because it can go walkies otherwise. It's quite hard. You can also, they don't come with them, but you can put on optional spikes, which might be a good idea. Yeah, I mean, it's a very plain looking. I mean, obviously, it's designed to be used in home theatres and things like that, so looks aren't really important, and it's a sub, so fine by me. Thank God it's a sensible size and weight, so moving it around and installing it was a lot easier. And it's that easy to install. Obviously, you simply plug it in and then do rest. Basically, it's designed, set the level, set the crossover. Obviously, if it's LFE, you put it right around to LFE. You've got the phase button, but it should be 0 if you're not going to be anything wrong with the setup of your system. And then after that, really everything's designed to be done from the receiver rather than through the subs. So the sub it's pretty simple in terms of its controls. No remote control, obviously. Like I say, it's built to a price point. But what I can say is they know how to make a sub. And this sub isn't big, but my God, it performs. It punches well above its weight in terms of its performance. Really, really solid bass and really fast and tight. It's a cracking little sub. I'm absolutely amazed at the performance and particularly at the price. I think if they're targeting the home theatre market and particularly the affordable end. I mean, some of the stuff I've seen recently not only has been huge, but obviously it's been quite expensive. But I think £499 for a good sub is a very good price.
I see. This is why I think, going back to the late 90s and then when AVForums came around in 2000, the chat was about REL because it was affordable. It was high performance, but it was at everyman pricing. And it was a relatively new product as well for a lot of people in the UK. I mean, obviously subwoofers have been around a long time in the US market, but for the UK market, I think what REL managed to do was introduce people to this product, to adding something into their system that was beneficial, and at a really decent price point. And it sounds like, because they did go the high end side of things. I'm trying to remember what they were used to be called. It was the Studio and the Senator, and they did
Senator,
these.
I remember, yeah.
They did these big subwoofers.
I mean, they still make high end subs.
Yeah,
there's plenty of high end subs.
The point I'm trying to make is they're getting back to the everyman sub, the nice price point versus performance, value for money, something that looks nice as well, that you can add into a modern contemporary living room, and it's not going to look out of place. It's kind of the point I was trying to get to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I totally agree. This is a real return to, I think, an area where they were very strong in the days when we first got into AV and bought our first subwoofers. There's a reason why we both bought RELs first, because they were good and affordable. And this is back to that again. This is a home theatre subwoofer that's affordable and really, really good. And it's also got quite a few. I mean, if you think about it, yes, you can buy it for use in a 5.1 or 7.1 system, whatever you've got, but you could also buy it and use it to beef up a soundbar.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's ideal for that, because it is relatively inintrusive and reasonably small, so you can pop it into a lounge quite easily, move it around, get it to the right spot. As I say, it's not a massive looker, but it's not unattractive either. I mean, it's got the sort of the wooden blackwood cabinet with a glossy top to it, so it's and the REL name in the middle of the glossy top, so it looks quite nice. It's unobtrusive. It's small enough to fit around, so that's always something you can do. At £499, you could even think about getting two if you want to, two subs at the front of the room, or even more. I mean, this is a kind of price point where you've got options like that. And yeah, I think these are going to sell really well. Yeah, because I just think it's such a brilliant performer, but also it's just a well made, well designed, great performance, and a cracking price. And what more could you want really from a sub? And
I've got to say, they've always had high level inputs as well, Ed. And when they first came to market, it wasn't just about the home cinema market. It was also about adding this into your hi-fi.
They predate home cinema. The earliest models, I think, came out before Dolby Surround, and it was essentially, beyond augmenting. I mean, the Lord's philosophy was augmenting the lower regions. Actually, then had effect on how we perceived the entire sonic frequency, and it must be said, in the hands of people who know what they're doing, I have had REL music demonstrations which have been genuinely impressive. And when I reviewed the last set that I did, and they sent two, for the laugh, having
they
those
sent you two.
Yeah, having that set up carefully, augmenting a pair of relatively teeny Acoustic Energy AE1 classics, it was a genuinely satisfying musical experience. It bloody well ought to be, because it wasn't. It was a far from inexpensive method of doing things. But yes, REL and Eclipse are the two subwoofer manufacturers who exist in a world where they do things subtly differently, and I mean, obviously, what you're describing here, Steve, strikes me as slightly different, but they're more traditional offerings. You might lose that last half octave of explosions, but the commensurate gain in speed and agility,
musicality as well.
Yeah, is very, very considerable.
Yeah, I've got to say, their approach to doing things, and it's an approach that I approve of, and I know sometimes we knock heads, Ed, in when it comes to music and how we should use subwoofers in systems and all the rest of it. But my approach has always been that it's there to fill in the bottom frequencies and to take the strain off the main speaker, so you're balancing the sound and giving yourself more headroom, basically. Now, there are people who add subwoofers in and overcook them, especially for dance music and that kind of thing, which I don't agree with. But what you're saying there, and obviously the way that Richard Lord went about, progressing the product and introducing the product, it was more about that understated, adding it in and giving yourself a little bit more headroom, rather than it standing out and you realising it was in the system. And that's what I liked about it. It was a nice blend. So, and I've just been looking at his bio, and unfortunately I hadn't realised it's been so long since he passed. It was last year, last July. And is one person in the industry I never met. I never got the opportunity to meet him, and it's a bit of a shame that, because he sounds like a real character, and I would have wanted to shake his hand and say thank you for introducing me to subwoofers, because they were a big favourite on the forums, and hopefully they'll get back on form again. It sounds like they're heading that way, Steve, and hopefully this model will do well for them, and we'll get a bit more chat on the AVForums about the REL brand.
Yeah, and one other thing they sent me along to test with this sub, and I know Ed's tested a previous version, is they also sent the HT Air. So this is the home theatre Air wireless modules. So you attach one module, the transmitter, to the receiver end, and then the receiver transmitter to the sub, and you can connect it wirelessly to your receiver or amplifier or processor, and therefore have a little bit more freedom about moving it around the room, and also obviously you don't have to run a cable across the room, which is a nice little feature to have for some people as well.
Yes, and I have to admit, if it's anything like the Arrow system that I used, it's slightly bulky, but there were no latency. I mean, obviously the mechanics of testing latency outside of a lab isn't easy, but as best as I could ascertain by really giving it really testing it to destruction, I couldn't get latency issues at all. So that was incredibly
I think this
impressive.
is just similar, no latency, but slightly smaller devices, so they're a bit more compact, I think.
Yes,
because looking at the pictures of yours, they look really big.
They were.
Okay, so I think that wraps up hardware for this week. I was going to talk about a cello TV, but I think we'll save some TV chat for next week, because hopefully I'll have had time to go through some of these Samsung TVs that have turned up with me this week. So I now have a Q8 here. And I've just set that up, and I've had a busy week, so I haven't really had a chance to look at that. So we'll go over initial thoughts in next week's podcast. The following week's podcast, there isn't one because it's a bank holiday Monday, and as we haven't had a holiday this year, the podcast will be taking a break for the bank holiday, and then immediately after the bank holiday, it's IFA. So we're going to have lots to talk about when it comes to IFA, and myself and Steve will be on the podcast on September the 3rd. Now, September the 3rd's podcast will be late on the Monday. Normally it's there sort of 1 minute past midnight on the Monday morning. It will be probably Monday evening because we're going to record the podcast on the Monday, isn't that right, Steve? So
that's right.
IFA will still be fresh in the mind. We'll record it on the Monday, and then the podcast's back to normal the week after that. So that's bank holiday Monday. Don't expect a podcast. There's not one around. We're going to take the bank holiday off because we've got IFA that week, and we're going to be running around. It's the same size as CES, and it's so stretched out, and you've got to get to one hall to the next hall to the other. It's going to be a great workout in terms of fitness. But it's not an easy show to get around, especially when you've only got a day and a half, which myself and Steve have to get around and have a look at stuff. And it sounds like there's going to be some really interesting stuff there this year as well. So, especially projector-wise, the interesting projectors, stay tuned because there's some
exciting stuff coming.
There's a little teaser trailer on the homepage.
I watched that this morning.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, so it's all looking good in terms of projectors. So if that's your thing, stay tuned for IFA. It's going to be exciting. And plus, we've got the two Sonys to look at as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the Master Series Sonys. So that's coming up. That's where the podcasts are going to be in the next few weeks. And we'll be back in a sec with movie news, but no review. Oh, yes, we've got a review, and it's a special one. Stay tuned. Right, so I said it was going to be a special review, and it is because it's not from Steve. It's not from me. It's definitely not from Ed. So, Mark's been to the cinema. What did you go and see, Mark, and tell us what you thought?
Yes, I was informed, as it's now summer holidays for kids, and my nephew informed me that I was taking him to see Teen Titans Go to the Movies. So it's a Cartoon Network kind of teen superhero type thing, kids cartoon, involving DC characters, and it's very much from the kind of modern school of kids TV, where it's kind of a knowing nudge and a wink to the parents or adults in the room with the occasional joke. Not as kind of highbrow as something like Wish Fart or something like that. No sniggering at the back. But it's very much in the kind of colourful, zany slapstick mould. But there were a few moments where I did actually laugh out loud. Maybe because I've got a puerile sense of humour, but it opens with a good first fart gag, which is always good. And that got all the kids laughing. But there are little things in there, like obviously they're DC characters, so putting in the Marvel jokes, stuff like that. People mistaking them for the Guardians of the Galaxy. but also stuff that kind of goes over kids' heads, like Nicolas Cage is voicing Superman in it, and
Nice touch.
But it takes you a moment, and you think, "Hang on, I know that voice," and then you suddenly realise, and obviously, you're in a kind of room full of like kind of 6 and 7-year-olds who just completely don't get it, and like little things like they have to go back in time, so you get the little musical cue from Back to the Future and stuff like that. But it's just very much a kind of a visual movie. As they go back in time, you've got a group of superheroes riding big wheel trikes to the sound of Aha's Take on Me, as they have to perform stunts to raise a rad meter, and then neon glow kind of shoots out of the handlebars, and they go back in time. And
sounds really good.
Yeah, exactly. And it's full of just kind of little catchy tunes and stuff like that. And there's one genuinely great joke in there surrounding Bruce Wayne's parents, which I won't spoil for people, but I genuinely, if you don't laugh at that, then you have no soul, as far as I'm concerned. It's I really, really enjoyed it. It's not, at 88 minutes, it just feels like a kind of feature length version of a kid's cartoon. And there's not too much of a message there. It doesn't try to be earnest or anything like that. It's just really kind of idiotic, childish jokes for, an hour and 20 minutes, which is perfect for me.
So if people are at a loose end with school holidays and they've got the kids running around tearing the place to bits and they want to get out the cinema, you recommend it then?
Yeah, thoroughly. I mean, as I say, it's not quite up there with Wish Fart or Lego Star Wars or that kind of thing with that kind of fourth wall breaking style of highbrow comedy, as Wish Fart obviously is. But yeah, very much simplistic, colourful style, and yeah, really good fun.
Okay, good stuff. And your score out of 10?
Score out of 10. Eight fart jokes out of 10.
Okay, good stuff. There you go. Now, normally myself and Steve would then be waxing lyrical about the Meg, but the Meg only opens today as we record the podcast. And we haven't the time to get out there. But have you booked your tickets, Steve? Are you going to go and see it?
I'm going to go and see it next week. I haven't booked my tickets yet, but I'll go and see it probably on Tuesday or Wednesday. But we can definitely talk about it next week's podcast.
Yeah, good stuff. I'm going to go and see it as well. Dying to see it, actually. So I'm going to go and see that. Like you, probably next week. Early screening as well.
The weird thing was, even my 7-year-old nephew was telling me about the Meg. Have you seen the trailer? The Meg, it's a megalodon. Yeah, it's really, I think everyone's interested in that one.
Yeah, good. And hopefully it lives up to the hype in the trailers and everything else. So, films opening this week, Steve.
We have a few. We've got The Festival, which basically looks in the trailers like the In-Betweeners go to a Glastonbury. At least one of the In-Betweeners is in it. Joe Thomas, I think his name is.
Yeah,
Joe
I think
Thomas,
they're stuck in those roles until.
Yeah, basically they could pay them until they're in their 50s. But it looked quite funny in the trailers. I mean, if you've ever been to a festival, it kind of hits all the notes that I know from the fact you don't go to the loo for 3 days because you don't want to face the toilets and that kind of stuff, and you haven't had a shower or anything like that. It did look quite funny in the trailer. So that's coming out. The Festival, comedy set in a festival. Also coming out, Christopher Robin, which is from Disney, part of their ongoing sort of plan of turning popular animated stuff into live action things. So this involves Christopher Robin, now grown up and played by Ewan McGregor, rekindling his relationship with his cuddly toys, particularly Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore.
In China?
Yes, it's been banned in China because, and this is really bizarre, it's been banned in China because Winnie the Pooh's been banned in China more specifically because there's been lots of stuff on the internet comparing the Chinese premier, his name now.
Xi Jinping,
thank you, who looks a bit like Winnie the Pooh. Now, that just seems like mildly amusing. Hardly the reason to ban it, but that's why they ban it. So they've got no sense of humour in the.
Any early reviews on this one, Steve?
Sorry?
Any good reviews on this one? Early reviews? Has it been reviewed well?
It's been out in the States for a while now. It's been reviewed very well. Apparently, it's very emotional, makes you cry.
Looks very earnest.
But that could be any film for you, though.
Yeah, true. It's got it's had good reviews in the States and been well received. And I don't know.
Paddington set the kids' kind of bear bar very high, I think.
It did, yes.
It did. But yes, apparently it's quite good. It's made by Mark Foster, actually, who directed one of the Bond movies of all things, and also did Finding Neverland. So I think he does sort of that kind of thing quite well. Yes. Anyway, it's got Ewan McGregor and Hayley Atwell are the human leads, and then various voices doing the animated. Then and they're CG animated versions of Pooh Bear, the actual bear version, but still looking similar to the 2D animated cell animation version from Disney. And also you've got Eeyore and Tigger and everybody in there. So it sounds like it might be quite nice actually. And also coming out this Friday, The Equaliser 2. Which is obviously the sequel to The Equaliser with Denzel Washington back as the Equaliser. If you've ever seen the Edward Woodward TV series, this is obviously a lot more animated than that because Denzel's a bit younger, a bit more action-packed. But I think it's directed by the same director who did the original one, Antoine Fuqua, who's worked with Denzel Washington on quite a few movies.
Does it have a bit more blue language in it, Steve?
A lot more blue language, yes. I've actually seen The Equaliser. I saw it on a plane, and I really enjoyed it. So,
well, I haven't seen it.
It's quite a nice little understated little film.
Yes, I like Denzel does that kind of character like he can do in his sleep. That kind of quiet, but when he gets pushed too far, delivers the violence with great aplomb. And I think Denzel does it really well. He's good in The Equaliser. He plays this character. Who's unassuming, but actually has all this training behind the scenes. The way he goes, basically, I think one point goes into a room full of Russian gangsters and kills them all with a pencil. That kind of thing. So I quite enjoyed it. It's out on 4K disc actually, if you're interested. And so that's coming out on Friday as well. I will probably get it on disc rather than go to the cinema.
Yeah.
Because I'd rather see the Meg next week. But yes, there's three quite interesting films coming out.
Are you going to go and see Christopher Robin?
I don't know. I'll see. I might do a double bill. That and the Meg.
do you have to buy a lot of hankies to go in with that one? You will if it's a bit of a weepy anyway. I mean, you'll be crying at the Meg, knowing you.
Yeah, we'll be crying at the sight of Statham in the Meg. Apparently, the early word on the Meg is that it's dumb but doesn't take itself seriously, and therefore it's all from the beginning, and that's fine.
Yeah, I need a bit of fun at the cinema, so hopefully that'll be the case. Right, Blu-rays. Well, let's mix them together because there's not a lot coming out in Blu-rays, but Blu-ray and 4K Blu-ray. What have we got coming up?
Well, coming out on Monday on both Blu-ray and 4K disc is A Quiet Place, which I've been talking about for a couple of weeks now, and I know you ordered it, but I think it's a cracking little film, really great little horror film. Really well directed by John Krasinski, and a really great performance from Emily Blunt, his real-life wife, playing his wife in the film.
Is this the one where they can't make a noise?
Yeah, it's the one where they can't make any noise, otherwise you get attacked by these blind but sound-sensitive monsters. And it's just basically a four-hander with just the father and mother and the daughter and son dealing with tragedy, dealing with this world. The mother's pregnant. Obviously, babies make noise. They're going to have a baby. They have to work out some way of having a baby without attracting the monster's attention. It's very tense. Some great scares in it, and a brilliant use of the soundtrack. Where because obviously you think, well, there's no sound. Obviously, there's always sound. It's them trying to suppress that sound that makes it interesting. And when there is a noise, it's really loud. It's a great dynamic range in this soundtrack, but it's a cracking little film and a great disc, and I highly recommend it.
And Kaz's review is on the homepage as well. You've probably caught up with it last week because we put it out a little bit earlier. I'm looking forward to it, Steve. I think it'll be a good little movie, like you say. You've piqued my interest anyway, so and it's not like me to spend 20 quid on a Blu-ray on a whim. So there you go. What else can we get 4K wise?
Also out on Blu-ray, it's not its first time. It's been out before on disc, but I think it's a bit more of a special edition now. Is Tideland, which is a film by Terry Gilliam, a very strange film about a young girl with a very active imagination who creates a sort of a fantasy world around her to deal with other issues like abuse. It's a challenging film, but I have seen it and I did think it was quite interesting. And he gets a great performance out of the little girl. Actually, Gilliam's one of those guys that does a bit like Spielberg, can work well with children in terms of getting performances out of them. So that's coming out. If you're a Gilliam fan, one to pick up. And then in terms of 4K releases, there have been quite a few ththings announced. Most of them seem to be coming out in October. Certainly in the States, I guess around about the same time in the UK. But we've got the Matrix sequels coming. There'll be, obviously, the Matrix itself came out a few months ago. They're releasing Reloaded and Revolutions, plus also they're doing it as a box set of all three if you want to get that, if you didn't get the original one. The Fast and Furious films are coming. They've already released 6, 7, and 8 have already on 4K disc. They're now bringing out 1, 2, and 3 on 4K disc.
But you'll not be interested in them.
I will get them just to complete the collection, but obviously the one I want is Fast 5, which is the best of them, and also the first one that has The Rock in it. So
at least he's honest.
No.
Can you name any of the cars that are in the first 1, 2, 3?
I haven't got a clue. Yeah. I haven't got a clue. I don't think about the films. I don't care about. I couldn't go over monkeys about cars. But when The Rock turns up, it just goes to another level. Basically, that's true. It's true. The films Fast 5 is a heist movie with The Rock. And some people in cars, but it's The Rock that makes that film, and
it annoys me. He is right about that. Fast 5, against all odds, is a truly outstanding film. It has elements of the Meg in so much as no one's taking it that seriously.
No. It's entertaining, and what more could you want from a film? I mean, they're dragging a massive safe through the streets of Rio. Is it? They're in Brazil. They're in Brazil somewhere, aren't they? I think it's Rio. They're dragging a safe, and this is a big safe. They're dragging it along behind a high-performance sports car, as if that's even conceivable. And you don't question it. It's just really two. It's brilliant. It's so. If you haven't seen Fast 5, if you're going to see one Fast and the Furious movie, that's the one you want to watch. It is brilliant.
Unfortunately, I watched the first one. I haven't watched any of the others.
I'd say the first one, which is just basically a Point Break remake, is one of the weakest. The latter ones are the ones with The Rock, basically the ones that are good.
The second one is dreadful. Tokyo Drift is odd. Because obviously it's been hammered back into the timeline, like hammering a square peg into a very round hole. It has a saving grace that it's weird. It's a weirdly charming film, in certain regards, and as a single sequence of surround effects that, if you don't have a relatively decent system, just sounds uncontrollably bad. The initial race up the car park as a demonstration sequence in Tokyo Drift, if they do that right in 4K, will be brilliant. If you've got the equipment that's up to the job. And I can't remember who the lady was in Tokyo Drift, but she was jaw-droppingly attractive. I mean, that's by the by. But yeah, and then the fourth one is just weirdly bleak and has lots of races.
It is bleak, isn't it? And it's a kind of a bleak reboot, because obviously if you don't know much about the Fast and Furious, Vin Diesel's in the first one. He's not in the second one. He only appears right at the end of the third one. So the fourth one was kind of getting their gang back together again. Mm-hmm. But then the fifth one is where it just becomes a completely different. The first four films are basically car racing movies, aren't they?
Yes.
The fifth film, it becomes heist movies and high concept entertainment, basically, and The Rock arrives, and then it becomes a whole different thing.
Yes.
Anyway, they're coming out on disc. Also announced The Evil Dead. They've done a new 4K restoration of the 16mm camera negative. It's going to be out in 4K with Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. I don't know how good that's going to look. I mean, the Evil Dead to me always has to look like a crappy VHS.
Yeah, it has to.
That's the only way I can imagine it. The idea of it being in 4K, is a bit weird. But if you like The Evil Dead, and it is a cracking film, that's coming out. Also, a couple of Fincher movies are being prepped by Sony. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, and also, and this is interesting, Panic Room. Panic Room never been released on Blu-ray. It's basically going to go for DVD. It's never had a Blu-ray release. Right. At least I've never found one, because I would have bought it if it had. Yes, never been released on Blu-ray. To my knowledge, I'm prepared to be corrected if someone knows it better than me. Might have been some obscure foreign release, but certainly in the States and the UK, as far as I'm aware, it's never been released on Blu-ray. It's getting a 4K release. So that'll be interesting. Now, just keep my fingers crossed that someone at Fox will finally release The Abyss. It's the one film that's one of my favourite films, never been released on Blu-ray.
True Lies as well. I know.
Yeah,
True
I'm not
Lies.
so bothered about True Lies.
I'm not bothered about it, but it'd be nice to see it, because we were promised a restoration for Blu-ray, and it never appeared. And now we're being promised restorations of these films for 4K. And James Cameron keeps saying, "Yes, I've done it," and the stuff's done.
Yeah.
But
where is it then?
Yeah, exactly.
Because The Abyss has never even had an anamorphic DVD release.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just I've got a non-anamorphic DVD, and that's it. And I bought that in '99. So for nearly 20 years now, there's been nothing else, which is crazy.
I mean, the only way to see it in HD is actually on Netflix.
Yeah, it's on Netflix.
Yeah.
But it's not the longer cut, is it? It's just the
theatrical. It's just the theatrical.
So
one, yeah.
I'm really.
There's always a bitter aftertaste
a wet
for
gate
you.
scan. They've done the 4K pass. They've done an HDR pass. It's all been done. So for God's sake, Fox, get it out, because I want to see it.
Okay.
Anyway, that's 4K disc.
Okay, right. we're fast running out of time, but there's definitely two things that we're going to talk about to finish the podcast. The first one is Patrick Stewart coming back to Jean Luc Picard in a new Star Trek series. I've only read that headline. I haven't read any of the news stories. I don't know any of the background to this one, Steve. So for the rest of us out there that don't know anything about it, just quickly give us what the news is.
There was much more than that headline. He was at a Star Trek convention, I think it was last week, and he appeared to everyone's surprise and announced that they're planning a new Star Trek series with Picard. So obviously they've got the current prequel series going on, Star Trek Discovery. I know that they've got quite a few series in the works. I think Nicholas Meyer, who made Star Trek 2, Wrath of Khan, is supposed to be working on a series separately. I don't know what happened to that. But yes, they're doing a new series with Picard. Now, he's in his 70s, so I don't know how great this is going to be.
Do you know what this reminded me of the moment I read this? Is that little, obviously the Simpsons, so on and so forth, but they do that Star Trek 12, so very tired.
Yeah.
The ship is drafty and cold, so no one listens to my complaints.
The way I'm reading this, and maybe this is just the way the spin I've put onto it, but I get the feeling that we're going to pick up with him, obviously at the age he's at now, and not necessarily as the Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Because all he says is it picks up with Picard. So
didn't they show what happened to them at the end of
they did Generations?
Series? Wasn't he on
All Good Things? He was a farmer.
All Good Things. Where he's a vineyard, isn't he? He's vineyard in France. So that's
mad,
isn't it?
Yeah. He's got dementia or whatever, or that's what they think it is.
Space dementia.
Yeah. Space dementia, yeah. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that one.
Do you think this is going to extend his Professor X character from Logan, like old, demented, old man wandering around a field in France? I might watch that.
It'll tap into something in you, Stevie.
Yeah, on a field in Wiltshire in my case.
Yes,
weeping.
It'll be interesting.
As long as there's some crying, that's fine.
I mean, I don't know. It just sort of, to me, just smacks of like they don't know what they're doing.
Nothing else is working.
What can we do? Well, who's still? We can't. Can we bring back Shatner? No, because he killed. It's like who's still alive in the timeline and alive in real life?
I'm surprised they didn't go with Frakes, because he's still around that. He's still around Star Trek and so on.
Maybe he'll be in this. I mean, he's been doing, because bizarrely, he's been directing episodes of Discovery and episodes of The Orville. Yeah. And I saw the trailer for the second season of Discovery, and there's a bit at the end in the lift that I thought was a scene from The Orville. It's like, hang on, what's going on here? The one with the alien sneezes, and you're like, that is straight out of The Orville.
Yeah, it is.
This further point that satire is in the modern world. Satire is dead. News now looks like Brass Eye, and it's impossible to ultimately, there is nothing weirder than what's actually happening. Yeah. So you can't do it anymore.
Yeah, the moment when President Donald Trump entered the White House, satire went right out the window, because it's like, well, the real world is beyond satire now, because it's become its own, it's become a joke. Where do you go from there? How do you satirize that? You can't. You just can't. You have to give up.
So let's swiftly change the subject. It'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Right. So the Meg, we're really excited about the Meg. Steve raised the question in the run order. What's our favourite aquatically based thrillers? Well, if you're talking about the Meg and so on, I have to say Jaws. Jaws is still.
I should have put there, and you can't count Jaws.
Yeah. You should have, because that's the first one. It's like you can't beat Jaws. So let's not even go there.
Do they have to be fish based? It's just about the sea.
Yeah. You can't do Jaws or any of its sequels.
Right. Okay. Well, that's fine then, because Jaws is a classic that you shouldn't be touching anyway. It's cinema history. For me, I do have a soft spot, and I did an honest trailer about it this week, and I absolutely laughed and laughed and laughed. Deep Blue Sea. It's one of these where the tongue is firmly in the cheek. It is so stupid, and so out there, but I just love it, and I love Sam Jackson's character in it. I love the way they dispatch him. It's good fun, and I find that really entertaining. And again, it's shark based. It was another one that just popped in my head, but that and there's I'm struggling with others. I'll listen to what other people have to say, and maybe it'll spur me on to remember.
I needed to check. So, are we talking about stuff where it's man versus beast in the sea, or just stuff in the sea?
No, it could be anything in the sea, really.
Well, in that case, two clear guilty pleasure films. Hunt for Red October, simply because Sean Connery being not a Russian and giving precisely no shits about any part.
I just love the scene where the camera zooms in his mouth as he's speaking Russian, then pulls back and it's in English.
Well, do you know what? They had to do something, because otherwise it would have been a rattling good read.
But Connery won an Oscar for playing an Irish cop with a Scottish accent, so
yeah, it's Sean Connery. Different rules apply. But I love Hunt for Red October. I think it's a thoroughly entertaining.
Now we see.
film.
I think we've opened the floodgates exclusive ban here. If we're counting that, because I took it as in honour of the Meg, it had to be animals under the water.
Yeah, you see, I don't watch that many animals under the water thing. So the only one I'd give for that category, again,
because Deep Blue Sea versus the Hunt for Red October, you couldn't get two more different films.
No, but they're both in the sea. That's the one. That's what ties them together. If it has to be an animal one, I'm going to shout out for the film made on a budget of £15, which is Deep Rising, which is weirdly
yes, I like Deep Rising. That was going to be one of my choices.
Well, there you go. I'll leave you to.
No, go on. You do it. Go on.
Well, no, but if we're not dealing with pure animal things, another one that it's a terrible film, but I do enjoy it, is Ghost Ship. I just find that weirdly entertaining, and then also really pushing the boundaries of what counts as a sea film. North Sea Hijack with Roger Moore. It's just genius. Absolutely bloody marvellous and stupid. I mean, dumber than a box of rocks, but what a great film. So yeah, I guess I've tested that to destruction. But Ghost Ship is a weird. I don't normally like films of that nature, but I admire the fact that they were quite. It's like, how are we going to liven this up? How are we going to get female nudity into a film where it's basically people pottering around a deserted ship? Leave it with me. I'll work it out. And pound for penny.
If you want to do, I love the scene in Deep Blue Sea where in order to not be electrocuted, she has to take off her wetsuit to stand on it, and therefore get her into a bra and knickers. Basically, really gratuitous.
It's like, how do we do that? So yeah, those would be my choices. I found the sea to be more compelling as a human interesting with machinery than against animals. I mean, in the same way that Das Boot that's a genuinely awesome piece of cinema. And the sea is as much an adversary as anything else. I think that's great.
If you're looking for good sea-based movies rather than guilty pleasures, well, Steve's already mentioned it, so it'll be in his list, no doubt.
It would have, I won't mention it a second time, but yes.
It is in the list. It's only two I can think of.
I enjoy U571 if you're talking about submarine.
That's terrible, though.
I know it's historically cobblers, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah. Would Titanic count? I mean, it's on the ocean.
Titanic's a ship-based thing, yeah. Razor Titanic. Now there's a cracker.
But that's another one where it's bad, and as a result of it being bad, it's actually quite good.
Yeah, another one for it's just popped in my head because I'm thinking George Clooney must have made something aquatically based. Perfect Storm. You remember that? George Clooney.
Actually, now that's a prop, and that is actually obviously notwithstanding it's based on truth, but that, if you like, that's interesting because it turns the sea into the creature.
Yeah,
and that's something.
There are predominantly two types of films set at sea. You've got the ones that use the water itself to instill fear. So the water's kind of a character, as it is kind of in Jaws itself. And then you've got those that kind of just use it as a tool to isolate everyone. So it's stuff like Triangle and things like that. It's essentially a bit like in the old Agatha Christie stories where like they'd go off to an island and then it'd be cut off. It's just a way to completely cut off.
World.
Yeah, but ways to just cut off all your characters from anything that happens. In the same way that kind of all films now have to have a conceit about why mobile phones don't work.
Yeah.
But yeah, if we're going guilty pleasures, then can I just say Under Siege?
Oh, yes.
If Under Siege is wrong, I don't want to be right.
Again, how do we... It's a ship chock full of men. How do we get nudity in? Hold my beer.
I know. That was the thing. You can tell someone's just ticked a box there. How on earth are we going to do this?
Is she a cake or something? Isn't that how they get off the ship? Yeah.
And let's face it, any film. I mean, you've got the many faces to which there are two of Steven Seagal, but then it's like, well, we need someone who's going to choose some scenery. Hello, is that Gary Busey? And yeah, making full use of him, and that was possibly his last role before he really disappeared off the end of batshit insanity.
But the weird thing is that if you see Gary Busey now, he's madder than the character in Under Siege.
Yes, he's method acting his way into.
That was his understated performance.
And Tommy Lee Jones, who's clearly realised about 15 minutes into filming that this is not going to be, not going to be his final. So it's like, do you know what? I'm going all in. Put my tie-dye t-shirt on. I'm wearing a bandana, and I'm just going to ham it like a gammon factory. And I agree with you. Under Siege. I don't know. I find, because of the absurdity of its premise, I in some ways enjoy Under Siege 2 even more. But obviously, there's very little C in that. So yeah.
No, I like Under Siege 2 purely because you're left going, how wide is a train though? How's he going to hide on this? Yeah. And it's just it's a very weird one. That
it's yes. But obviously, it's a Steven Seagal film. The finer points of reality and plot have clearly never been a huge concern to him. So but all good.
So you mentioned the different uses of the water, and Waterworld immediately came to mind. So sorry for interrupting you there, Mark. It popped in my head, and I said it at the same time. But did that not sink a studio, or very closely sink a studio?
No,
Steve?
actually, it did cost a lot of money, but it actually it did quite well box office. It wasn't the big bomb everyone claimed it was at the time. Although it did cost a lot of money, mainly because the water, the main set sank.
Yes,
so they had to build it twice.
Yeah.
That didn't help. And obviously, they discovered they should have asked Spielberg this question, because they could have given them the answer. It was the same studio. They should have known better. But Universal should have said, actually, shooting on water, really difficult, because the elements just turn on you. They got hit by, I think they got hit by a hurricane, which is what sank the set. They were shooting off of Hawaii. But shooting on water is never easy.
Yeah.
And I mean, it seems to be a pattern here, because Raise the Titanic did in for its studio. I mean, one of the people who'd lost a bus?
That was Lou Gray. Lou Gray lost his shirt on that one. Yeah,
wouldn't it have been?
He famously said it would have been cheaper to lower the Atlantic,
which is a fine quote.
Interestingly, Raise the Titanic, the lead character in the story is that Clive Cussler,
Dirk Pitt.
Dirk Pitt. Now, he is also the lead character in another film that lost a bucket load of money, Sahara, one of the biggest money losers of all time. So don't make films with Dirk Pitt is obviously the solution there.
The Clive Cussler books are the McDonald's of action fiction. They are terrible, but they are incredibly Moorish. I have read every single one of them. I make no bones to that. It's interesting that, yes, actually Cussler is blacklisted.
By whom? Studios.
over Sahara. But he is also extremely old, and I have every suspicion that the moment that he carks it, someone will try again. And he's also created another character who's set more turn of the 20th century, called Isaac Bell. Someone's going to have a crack at that, because actually those are quite engaging works, because they've been co-written by someone who understands plot and continuity. So they're quite nice books. I'm afraid I know too much about Clive Cussler.
You do. It's slightly stressing. My choices would be, let me think. So, if we're going shark-based films, there's a film called Shark Night, which I quite enjoyed. The clue is in the title. And also a film called Bait, which is brilliant. It's the one where there's a flood and there's a load of sharks stuck in a flooded supermarket. But people stuck in the supermarket with them.
Yeah.
Brilliant. If you haven't seen it, it's an Aussie film called Bait. Check it out. It's very funny.
I'm surprised you haven't mentioned Sharknado.
I've never seen Sharknado.
So they're not in the sea. They have escaped the sea and into the Nado. So
yes, exactly.
It hasn't been mentioned that I'm surprised, because it's not my cup of tea at all, but I know it's actually quite a good film. Is that Blake Lively one?
Oh yes, that's really good. Yes, The Shallows is excellent.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
really enjoyed that. A bit silly towards the end, but for the majority of it, it's a really tight little thriller, worth checking out. Poseidon Adventure, got to mention that. The original, not the remake.
Yeah.
And let me think. So there's that. You've done Waterworld.
What about Tom Hanks? He'll have done something, will he not?
He's stuck on an island, but does that really count? Oh, Captain Phillips.
Captain Phillips, yeah.
Phillips, yes.
Yeah, but again, the sea is incidental to that.
Yeah,
I would suggest.
So Splash.
I've never seen it.
There's a couple of knockoff films that were made to try and cash in on The Abyss before The Abyss came out, called Deep Star 6 and Leviathan, which are worth checking out.
Leviathan is so bad, it's great.
Yeah, it's really bad.
Again, it's been done on a budget of 75 pence.
Actually, Leviathan wasn't that cheap, but it was really bad. But so bad it's good. It's up there with Deep Rising as one of my sort of guilty pleasures. Yeah, I think that's enough aquatic films, isn't it, for 1 week?
Yeah, I think we've done quite well there.
Deep Rising's worth it. I mean, Famke Janssen, what a lady.
Mm.
You know.
Okay.
And she's never had a problem with appearing in objectively terrible films. She's just quite content to it's like, is there money there? Yeah, fine, off we go.
She also seems to be the Lucy Liu school of never seems to age. She looks exactly the same now as she did when she like that.
Extremely well. So yes.
Okay. So just to wrap up on that one, I put water-based movies into IMDb. It only brought back 35 titles. Because I think it's just a list created by somebody on there, and I've just been through that just to see, and quite a few of ours have popped up on this list, but others of interest might have been Crimson Tide.
Oh yes, Crimson Tide.
Tony Scott, Submarine. It's got Edge of Tomorrow in here, but I don't remember that being set on water. I don't know why that's what the Ghost Ship's mentioned.
Well, it's a beach landing. Edge of Tomorrow. Yeah.
So Saving Private Ryan's an aquatic film, then, is it?
Yeah, and as you can imagine, there's loads of Pirates of the Caribbean films in there. Poseidon rather than Poseidon Adventure, really? Okay. The beach, no, that's set on the beach, not in the water.
It does involve a shark, though, doesn't it? The beach. So
it does, yeah, it does. And there's a lot.
What was it? Does anyone remember? There was a kind of like made for TV, like based on a Peter Benchley one, where a shark gets legs.
I think. Did you have too much cheese and biscuits there, Mr. Botwright?
The Deep, that's Peter Benchley, isn't it? The Deep.
Yeah, but that didn't have shark legs.
No, it involved the conch-eel. It came out and everyone went to go and see it and thought, hang on a minute, there's no sharks in this. It's just a conch-eel and some bird in a wet t-shirt. Yeah. And that was the experience everyone went to go and see the Deep. And then there was The Island with Michael Caine, which was even worse. The paycheck gig for Michael.
As well as Jaws 4.
Oh, well, like you said, that paper swimming pool. So
there is a band called Shark Legs.
I'm sure this wasn't a fever dream.
I'm really intrigued with this now, Mark. So what did it get out of the ocean and walk around, or what?
It was like they were genetically engineering sharks, a bit like kind of Deep Blue Sea.
Piece of picture from 1998.
Yeah, sounds like it. And there should be a picture of a shark with legs.
A TV miniseries.
Right, if we find a picture of a shark with legs, that's the image that's going on the thread, isn't it, Phil? I've got to say, since we talk about silly films, but Piranha, Dante's 78 film, and Piranha 2: The Flying Terror, the first film directed by a certain James Cameron.
Yes, you're right. But was
that
I've
just got on Blu-ray.
Was that not river-based, though?
No, that was at. Both of them took place. Although you're absolutely right. I think piranha are freshwater fish, aren't they? Or maybe can they be both? But I'm sure the Piranha and Piranha 2 do take place. Piranha 2 definitely takes place on the sea. Piranha 2, I can't remember now. There may have been more of a river thing, a water world kind of thing, wasn't it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, surely, just if we're doing the image for the podcast, I was assuming it was going to be a middle-aged man weeping in front of a television, but but I have found a 1200 pixels wide still from Creature, which I just dropped into the box on Skype for Phil's delectation.
Okay,
it's possible. So there you go.
Okay,
you know, I'm conscientious like that. What can I say?
So on that, sharks with legs, and this one's actually got arms as well. So it's not just legs; there's actually arms. That's it for the podcast this week. I think we've done enough damage. My thanks to Steve Withers.
I want the head of the snake.
Ed Selley.
I don't have a lot of time, which means you don't have any.
And Mark Botwright.
He saw himself in the fish.
Don't forget, you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, bookmark avforums.com for latest reviews, news and videos, and of course leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes, but only if you enjoyed the show. I'm Phil Hinton, thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you again next week.